What's up, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna pencil draw. Roll the intro. I hope everybody's doing all right today. And in this episode, I figured it was time to get my pencils back to work. Now, I've been doing a lot of sketching lately, at home and at work. And I really shouldn't be doing so much drawing at work, but oh well, I gotta keep the art coming. And at this point, it's becoming an obsession to me. Now, for this drawing, I did the sketch with a simple yellow number 2 pencil. And I'm doing the shading with charcoal. I'm going to use a paper stub and a brush to do the blending of the charcoal. This is the first time I've ever tried out a brush, and by the end of this drawing I gave up on it. It wasn't for me. Now, pencil drawings start off with simple lines and shapes just like paintings, but we still have to maintain a good sense of values and tones. By layering and blending the charcoal, we can make the planes of the drawing darker as we move forward, and using a white charcoal pencil, we can create reflected light. You can also use the white charcoal to make highlights, but I prefer the color of the paper to make my own, and I use another tool to achieve this effect, which I'll talk about in a few moments. For the larger areas of the drawing, I should be using a charcoal block or charcoal powder in a jar with a paper stub to spread it around, but I don't have either of those at the moment. You know, poor artist life. But the pencils can get the job done. It'll just take a little longer. While drawing the towers, I used a little too much of the white pencil and it gave them a metallic effect. I should have been using it only for the reflected light, but I got a little too excited and scattered with my thought process. But I think that happens to all of us sometimes. And now I began to lay down the wooded hills and the distant mountain. Again, a charcoal block would have came in handy laying down these big areas of color, but the pencils will have to do. I draw each hill as a simple silhouette and make them darker as I come forward. I use a paper stub to blend out the base of the hills, giving them a misty effect. Getting the values right with these hills will give the drawing a great atmosphere. As I put highlights on the hills, I can now tell you about the special tool I use. It's an electric eraser. This tool can erase thick layers of charcoal, leaving the white of the paper behind and making crisp highlights. Ever since I discovered this eraser, I never make a drawing without it. I add strokes of white charcoal to the shadowed side of the mountain to give the effect of reflected light and a three-dimensional feel. I pop a few windows onto the towers, bringing a little more life to them. They were starting to feel like metallic mushrooms to me. I turn my attention to the final hill, laying some highlight on it, and with it the landscape portion of the drawing is done. We don't need too many details. Less is always more when it comes to drawing and art in general. Now I can begin work on the figure and the main subject of the drawing. Here I'll use my darkest tones, vibrant highlights, and all the subtle shades in between. A good contrast of values here will really make the subject pop off the page. There are a lot of details in this figure, from the folds in her clothes to the jewelry she's wearing, so keeping my pencil sharp is a must. I don't want to make my lines too thick and lose the fine detail I'm trying to convey in this piece. Hair is another tricky subject to get right, and the hair on this figure gave me more trouble than I would like to admit. It took me many layers of charcoal and line work till I was satisfied with the look of it. There's always at least one element in a drawing or painting I get stuck on, and I have to force myself to stop trying to make it perfect. Otherwise, I would never finish a piece of art. At this point in the drawing, I wasn't satisfied with the look of her face. Something felt off I wasn't seeing, so I spent what felt like an hour redrawing it. I finally figured out it was her lips and her eyes throwing off the balance of her face. They were too big and cartoonish for the look of this piece, so I refined them to a more realistic look. I move on to the folds and wrinkles of her dress. I focus on the subtle shadows and lines to get the look I'm after. A good knowledge of human anatomy is a must when drawing clothing. It makes it much easier to figure out how the clothing wrinkles and folds on the figure, no matter what position they're in. I darken the railing behind the figure to separate her more from the background and to make her highlights stand out more. I keep the railing of the simple silhouette with sparse highlights to keep the focus on the figure. Remember, the elements of a drawing should always be arranged to enhance the main subject of the piece and whatever meaning or feeling you're trying to convey. With most of the heavy work done, I move into the final stages of the drawing. I darken shadows where I can and brighten highlights where they're needed. I look for lines that need refining and eliminate marks which don't add to the piece. I continue this searching until I have less and less to do. If at this point I can stare at my work for more than a few minutes and not add or fix anything, I call it done and walk away. To do any more could potentially ruin a good drawing. You have to have discipline to know when to call it quits. There's a quote by a famous artist whose name I can't remember who said, "A piece of art is never truly done, it is only abandoned." And that is one of the philosophies I carry into my work. Alright everybody, this drawing is done. Let me know what you think about it in the comments down below. And if you're new here, please hit that subscribe button, ring that bell so you get all the notifications. And y'all have a good one.